So for this weekend's mini lesson, we will be discussing endocytosis and exocytosis. These concepts are crucial to the AP Biology course. Endocytosis is when our cell membrane is bringing something in, and exocytosis is when we are expelling, we're getting rid of something. So first, we will be discussing endocytosis. So now let's start with endocytosis. So endocytosis is a form of active transport. We need energy in order to pull things in here. So when particles that want to enter a cell that are too large to travel through the channels or to travel through that permeable membrane, a portion of the cell membrane is used to engulf the substance. So this is a little diagram right here. This is your cell membrane, and it's pinching inward and it's forming a vacuole. So it's like a little circle and it's pulling it in. And there are different types of endocytosis that we will get into. So any large substance, any large molecule or particle most likely will go through endocytosis. So for the most part, when it comes to endocytosis, there are three different forms of endocytosis. So there's pinocytosis, phagocytosis, and receptor-mediated endocytosis. Well, it's a little longer, so we're going to get into it on the next slide. But for pinocytosis, the cell is taking in liquids, and for phagocytosis, the cell takes in solids. So there's not a huge difference in the process, only the name and the prefix, which is the pino and the phagocytosis, but when you're taking in a solid and you're taking in a liquid, it is still endocytosis. Anything taking in is endocytosis. So now we're going to get into receptor-mediated endocytosis, which is a little more to take in. So for our final form of endocytosis, we will be discussing receptor-mediated endocytosis. So receptor-mediated endocytosis is all working with communication and signaling. It's almost like that proteins are texting each other in the cell membrane. So they're like, hey, we're here, let us in. So what's happening is receptors on the surface are working with these endopits. I call them the endopits for short, helps me remember it. So the endopit is when that cell membrane is pinching in, and it's lined with proteins and enzymes which activate and help speed up the rate of metabolic processes. So the ligand is binding to that receptor, and it's basically knocking on the door. It's saying, hey, let me in. And the cell membrane responds, it answers the door, it folds in, and what will happen is when that ligand binds to that receptor, a vesicle is going to around the ligand, and it's almost like a suitcase. It's the package will be the ligand, and it's protecting it and it's bringing it in. So it's just almost like a shield, like a guard. It's a storage center, and this storage center is going to allow it to come safely through the cell membrane. And this is all working through communication. So it's a knock, it is answered, and now that ligand / particle is in the cell membrane. So now, those are your three stages of endocytosis. Now let's get into exocytosis. So now we're discussing exocytosis, and exocytosis is simply just reverse endocytosis. So we're ejecting waste or we're secreting something. So it's like garbage disposal, or we need to send something out. So it's the same thing, except instead of pinching inward, we're almost forming a bubble outward. And instead of a vesicle or vacuole taking something in, it's surrounding something and pushing it out. So the cell ejects waste products or specific secretion products, hormones, etc., by the fusion of a vesicle with the membrane. So whatever we're expelling, the vesicle is going to surround it, it's going to store it, and it's going to be pushed out. So we are stepping out the door now. And anytime you have problems remembering exo or endocytosis, it's always important to look at the prefixes of X and then the prefixes of N. So we're expelling something or we're entering. And that's how you can remember exo and endocytosis. Exocytosis is simply reverse endocytosis, and it's much simpler and easier to remember than all the different forms of endocytosis. So I hope you enjoyed the mini lesson. There will be more of these every weekend. So the more you know, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and keep learning.